Happy Friday, folks, and welcome back to this week's random video blog. I am pretty much done with college. My sophomore year of college is pretty much over. I just got done with my final exam, so I'm out of here tomorrow. I'm going to a wrestling event tomorrow night. New England Championship Wrestling. It's going to be awesome. The Iron 8 tournament. If you're in the area, Beverly, Massachusetts in general, make the trip. It's going to be an awesome show. But nevertheless, though, this week's video blog was going to be about my experience talking to former Vice President of Talent Relations in WWE, John Laurinaitis. You're not gonna, you can't wait to hear the story. It's pretty sweet. It's pretty interesting, to say the least. And I filmed that video a couple days ago, because this week has been hectic, of course, with final exams and everything else going on with articles and stuff like that. So I didn't know if I was going to be able to do a video in time and whatever, so I filmed it on Tuesday or Wednesday, that whole story, and I was going to put it up today, but then that was before I watched the ESPN E60 special, the behind the curtain, the one in NXT from this past Tuesday, and I knew I had to make this video blog all about that. I was not able to watch it live. I was in studio doing Wrestle Rant Radio. I know it was like an hour beforehand, but I'm the type of person that like can't catch something like for a half an hour and then like not watch the rest until like the next day, because we don't have any DVR up here at school, so I wasn't going to be able to watch it until someone uploaded it online until like the following day. So I just figured I would just watch it all at once. I'll miss it, someone will upload it. I mean, originally I was going to watch it next week when I was home, because I had someone DVR at my house and I was going to watch it, I don't know, Sunday, Monday or something. But then, I mean, I should have thought better, since, people are raving all about it. It was the greatest thing, and I had to watch it, so I could not wait. And I've been like, didn't have any classes or exams or anything on Tuesday or Wednesday, or Tuesday and Wednesday, and the thing happened on Tuesday night. So Wednesday, I'm like scrambling all over online to find a link to the special, and I ended up finding one, and then I ended up watching it right before NXT on Wednesday night. So after watching it, I knew I had to make this week's video blog all about the special, my thoughts on it. I put a few tweets out about it at Wrestle Rant Cheap Plug. Right after I watched the special, just kind of raving and giving my general thoughts. But I knew I had to go a little bit more in depth with it. And I don't usually do written reviews on nextyearwrestling.net, another cheap plug for you. I don't do written reviews of like specials and stuff like that. I do of like movies and stuff under the director's cut section under that column. But this wasn't really that, so I figured I would just talk about it in this week's video blog. The John Laurinaitis thing will be up either next week or the week after. At some point this month, I can promise you of that. So stay in anticipation of that video. But still, E60, behind the curtain, if you watched it, you'll know where I'm coming from. All I have to say, this video could be so short, and I could just say that it was amazing, and that's it. But I wanted to go more in depth, because I really, really did enjoy it. I really did enjoy it. And if you missed it, then you missed a heck of a show. And like I said, you can catch it online. Some websites have already uploaded it. Watchwrestling.ch or whatever, and some other websites. You have to check it out. And this is coming from someone that has seen a number of wrestling documentaries, that has seen Beyond the Mats, which I thought was great. Has watched, what was the other one? I know there was like a CNN documentary, like came out right after Chris Benoit's death in 2007. My buddy John linked me to that one a couple of months ago. That was interesting, for lack of a better term. It was kind of disheartening, but it was also very interesting. He also linked me to the Wrestling with Shadows one, focusing on the Montreal Screwjob and Bret Hart's departure from WWE. That one was really, really good, even better than Beyond the Mat. I thought it was excellent. Even The Wrestler with Mickey Rourke that came out back in I think either 08 or 09. That was a great movie too. So they're all kind of focusing on the in and outs of the business, and a lot of those documentaries I just mentioned are pretty negative. Some intentionally, some not intentionally, unintentionally, whatever. That's just like the nature of it. And a lot of these, movies, documentaries, whatever, kind of focus on the business before it became what it is today. Even the Benoit one was in like 05, 06, right after the birth of the wellness policy and stuff like that. So, I mean, wrestling, the landscape of wrestling, whether a lot of people recognize it or not, has changed a lot in the last 30 years. Like when the Warrior died, there wasn't much negative publicity about that. When you have like Nancy Grace going in there like that cunt of a woman going on TV and talking about steroids and stuff, and she doesn't realize, I mean, I'm not denying that people don't use steroids today, but it's obviously not as prevalent as it was 30 years ago when Warrior was around. A lot of the people today, like you can't look at someone like a Daniel Bryan or a fucking, you know, who else is on the roster right now? Dolph Ziggler, Dean Ambrose can tell me that they're on steroids. You know, it's ridiculous. Again, maybe they're on something else. There's always going to be something else out there. But this video is not about that. This was the first wrestling documentary, which I guess you can call it, or documentary about wrestling. I'm not talking about like the Punk documentary, the Triple H documentary, the documentary about wrestling that wasn't negative pretty much at all. I thought it was great. Really kind of shined the light on the business, and a positive light, like I said before, is not really seen, which was great to see in and of itself. And from what I understand, WWE did not have any say in the editing of this video. They gave them the okay to kind of go ahead and film stuff. And this has been in the works for quite some time. They showed clips of people from NXT in like mid-2013 when Corey Graves was still a babyface fighting for the NXT titles with Adrian Neville. So this has been maybe 2 or 3 years in the making, which was great to see. It's also, like, to see how far they've come, too. Adam Rose, a.k.a. Leo Kruger, a.k.a. Ray LaPond, I think his name is. Corey Graves, Xavier Woods, Austin Watson, I think his name is in real life. So how the careers of all three of those guys have come in the last 2-3 years from NXT to the main roster. Not in Corey Graves' case, and I'll get to that in a minute. But that was great to see. So, I mean, that was really, really cool. They got a lot of, you know, what I was going back to, what I was saying before was that WWE gave them the okay to be filming this stuff. And it's interesting. I mean, it's not unheard of. Because like I said before, Beyond the Mat, from what I understand, I ended up actually doing a book report on it about a year ago or something like that for one of my classes, and I had like a 94 on it because I love, obviously, wrestling. You know, if you write about something you enjoy so much, it's so much, you know, easier to write about. So I got like a 95 on that blog post for whatever class I had last year, some blogging class. But anyway, you know, when I was doing research on that movie, on Beyond the Mat, it was, I read somewhere that obviously WWE gave them the okay, whoever the director was. I forgot what his name was. Some, you know, documentarist. He was not at all a wrestling fan, but he wanted to kind of get some inside info on the business and the wrestlers and the sob stories and stuff like that. Vince did give them the okay. Of course, Vince is heavily featured throughout that documentary, throughout that movie. He's interviewed several times. You get behind the scenes looks. Behind the scene looks at, you know, matches like Rock and Foley from the Royal Rumble 1999 and the whole Draws thing. He's gonna puke, you know, that whole thing when they're pitching characters and stuff like that. So Vince gave him that Blumenthal, I think his name might have been. Maybe I'm mistaking that for somebody else. I have no idea. But he gave him the okay to do his documentary too. And then after seeing it, after promoting it, he like backed away from it because he thought that, you know, he was shitting all over the business when it came out, which it was. Not intentionally, like I said, but it kind of unintentionally did that, kind of showing the lives of wrestlers and how much, you know, it's negatively affected them and stuff like that. So he kind of backed away from it, did not support it, did not fund it after that, after he saw how, like, bad it was. That's not the case with the ESPN thing. Like I said, they really promoted it on their website, on their YouTube channel, on Raw they were advertising it the night before. And it ended up coming through. Like, they're still pushing it pretty hard, like the behind-the-scenes stuff on their website, which is great to see, and I think it's well-deserved because I thought it was great. So, enough of this, you know, whoozy-schmoozy stuff, kind of getting into the specifics here. I'll talk about each of the three guys. They focused on, like I said before, Xavier Woods, Corey Graves, and Adam Rose, Leo Kruger, Ray LaPond, whatever you know him as. And I'll save him for last because I thought he was the most interesting one. Kicking it off with Xavier Woods. I've always been a huge Xavier Woods fan. I mean, this is pretty well documented. I had this on my, anyone who knows me well knows that I had do have a will not remove until list on my Bleacher Report profile. I've had that for like 5 years now. And one of the things that was on there for quite some time, for like 2 or 3 years, was Consequences Creed, whatever, Xavier Woods comes up to the main roster. He wasn't one of my favorite wrestlers when he was in TNA, but because I was familiar with his work in TNA when he got signed by WWE in mid-2010, I was excited to see him there because I think the guy's an incredible athlete. A lot of people don't, you know, praise his work enough. I don't think he gets enough credit for being as good as he is. He's not world champion material or anything like that. And I know WWE and TNA are two completely different beasts. So to get over in one does not necessarily mean you're going to get over in the other, or at least in TNA to WWE's case. You know, so I waited anxiously to see him in the WWE. And eventually he was called up. He was in NXT for a while. but he was called up in November of 2013 as Xavier Woods with a shitty gimmick. He was paired with R-Truth. If you get paired with Santino or R-Truth off the bat, you're pretty much doomed from the start. As seen with Emma and all these other, people, so talented people that were wasted. And thankfully, he's doing some good stuff now in the New Day, which is, they've really turned that ship around and turning them heel. And they mentioned at the end of the documentary that they're the current tag team champions. So they must have edited this or updated it as of like a week ago, because they put that in at the end when they were showing like where are they now. They said Xavier Woods is now part of the New Day, one half of the WWE Tag Team Champs or something like that. So, and that happened at Extreme Rules less than 2 weeks ago. So they must have updated it pretty recently. But going back to what I was saying before, I've said this a million times. Now I'm eating my words that WWE hates TNA. I'm pretty sure Vince does not give two shits about TNA. I don't think he hates them, loves them, whatever. I'm pretty sure he couldn't care less because they're obviously not any competition. I love TNA. Hey, I'm wearing a TNA shirt right now. I'm wearing my Magnus t-shirt. I'm watching TNA tonight. I love TNA. But I can admit that, TNA is no and never will be any competition to WWE. But, RJ and I were talking about this on Wrestle Rant Radio not too long ago. How many TNA stars have gotten over in WWE, excluding R-Truth and Christian, who are already WWE talents before they went to before they went to TNA and then came back to WWE. Karma was a victim of bad timing. Brandon Walker, Chris Harris, the Wildcat, whatever you want to call him, he did not get over. That didn't work out well. Lance Archer from WWE did not work out well either. So there's not a lot of success stories of people from TNA that have gotten over well in WWE for the most part. I'm hoping kind of Samoa Joe breaks that trend. And I was thinking to myself, like, Xavier Woods is a prime example of that. He came over from at TNA. He did pretty well for himself in NXT. He didn't win any gold or anything like that, but he got over with the Eddie Murphy-like gimmick. And, he's a very talented athlete, like I said before. And he has a PhD, which, of course, WWE loves and wants to promote and stuff like that. And they were talking about that in this documentary, and I thought it was pretty cool. And, I've talked to some people with their thoughts in the documentary. I talked to RJ, I've talked to a few people on Twitter about it, and they were kind of hoping for more behind-the-scenes stuff. And I do agree, but for what we saw, though, I thought it was really cool. Like the NXT process, when Triple H is sitting at the end of the table, and at the rest of the table, you have all these guys, pitching ideas, talking about, should we cut this guy? What are the future plans for him? You had Dusty Rhodes, you had a Michael Cole, Michael PSA. Michael PSA is always there. Whenever you don't think he is, he is. Whether it's the WWE Network, one of these specials, he's like sitting on the side too. It was so funny. He's such a fucking troll. Michael PS Hayes is. He's a keeper. Maybe not really, but he's always funny to see on these specials. But you have him, you have all these other top executives talking about, should we cut this guy? Should we keep him? What are their plans? Corey Graves, according to this special, was supposed to be called up in late 2013. But because he got injured twice, he was concussed, I think, in late 2013, then again right before WrestleMania in 2013 and then early 2014, he never got called up. And of course, we'll get to that afterwards. With Xavier Woods, going back to what the TNA WWE hate thing, what I was talking about, maybe Vince hates TNA. I don't think he does. I don't think he cares. But Triple H sure doesn't. I know they'll never acknowledge them on their show, and I don't really care if they do. I mean, it's cool, like from a smarky standpoint. Oh, look, TNA mentioned, whatever. For the most part, though, they don't need to be acknowledged. It's a completely different beast. I don't really care about that. But anyway, getting back to what I was saying, Triple H was praising the efforts of Xavier Woods, Austin Watson, whatever. And Michael Cole was like, he could be the spokesman for the company because he has a PhD. The guy could suck, and just because he has a PhD, they're going to push him to the moon. But that's not the case with Xavier Woods. I think it was, I don't know who said, I think it might have been Dusty Rhodes. Maybe it was somebody else who said, we got to either fish or cut bait with Xavier Woods. I don't think he's really shown me anything that tells me he needs to stay, whoever said that. Then Triple H said, we definitely need to fish. It's a fishing process. We need to keep this guy. I think he has something special. And they kind of went behind the scenes of his Raw debut, and that was really cool. And the guy's a huge, comic book nerd and stuff like that, kind of, playing with his Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toys and stuff like that. Like I said, he's incredibly intelligent, but that's not the only reason why he is and should be pushed in WWE. The guy has charisma. We saw that in NXT with the Eddie Murphy thing. It's kind of like an Eddie Murphy knockoff. I mean, I'm calling it Eddie Murphy. But they never really gave the guy the platform to get over, especially in the main roster. Triple H was praising him and giving him tips on what to do and stuff like that. And, shortly thereafterwards, I mean, he was fucking dead in the water when he came out with the Brodus Clay music that one time, and he was never really the same after that. Not that he was anything special before before that point, because really, from the point that he debuted, he was doomed. When he was paired with R-Truth, that really went nowhere. So that was interesting. Little kind of the success story of Xavier Woods, and he's really doing well for himself right now, kind of coming into his own as the heel in the New Day. Great to see. And then, before we get to Corey Graves or Adam Rose or whoever, RJ mentioned this on the show this past week. I kind of saw it for myself. I thought it was really cool when they were in the Performance Center and they show, like, Bill DeMott, who came off like a really nice guy in this special. I know I've heard all the stories of him being an asshole, stuff like that. I've watched him all the time on Tough Enough from the season of 2011. He's not like a huge asshole there. He is sometimes. He can be kind of a troll, but the harassment stories, I'm not denying them. If enough of them come out, then there's something has to be to them, of course. But on this special, he came out off as really, really helpful, very, very constructive. Constructive criticism when it came to helping Adam Rose get over, get better, to prevent him from getting released, because he saw something in him. So he can attribute a lot of that to Bill DeMott, who they mentioned at the end, by the way, was released, and after the harassment allegations and stuff like that. That was interesting they put that in there. Because, of course, WWE has not really come out about that at all since the release or resignation or whatever of Bill DeMott a couple months ago. But getting back to what I was saying before, showing the Performance Center, they showed Tyler Breeze, like, where should I hold the phone? Bray Wyatt was sweet. I mean, they showed it for all of 2 seconds. But they have him walking down the ramp, and Triple H is kind of giving him a few pointers on how to hold the lantern. Should it be in front of my face? Should it be on the side? Whatever. So I could see the other Wyatt family members. Stuff like that is really, really cool, especially with a guy like Bray Wyatt, who you don't really see out of character all that often. It's not like he was talking out of character, but just to kind of see those little things, like the smallest things, I think, to me, matter. Kind of made this special so realistic and kind of made you feel like you can connect to the people that were being featured. So we had Xavier Woods, then we had Corey Graves, who I've always been a big fan of, babyface, heel, whatever. I was very disappointed to see him, see his career get cut short last year after the concussions. And they talked about that. They didn't really put much emphasis on it. I mean, they showed they talked about it, how Corey Graves was heartbroken when he found out that he couldn't wrestle anymore. I've heard some people say they should have made it more of a bigger deal out of that and make it feel more emotional. And I do agree they kind of not glossed over it, but they could have. They took it a little lightly. A guy's career just ended. He was supposed to be this big deal on the main roster and couldn't get called up for whatever reason because of the injuries. So they could have made a bigger deal about that. I agree. But to see them, talk about him and his family, which I had no idea he had a wife. I've heard him in interviews and stuff on the Sam Roberts podcast, stuff like that. I had no idea he had a wife, much less a kid, too. And I think it was Adam Rose's kid who had some birth defect or something like that, which I'll get to, which was even more traumatic. But Corey Graves does have a kid, and the wife was crying when he said, or when his child had said that he made him some card that he couldn't wrestle anymore, or whatever. The wife said that Corey would have been heartbroken. All this other stuff. So they don't really go too much in depth with Corey other than his family and his career being ended. But, like I said before, he was set to be pushed as a big deal on the main roster, which we all kind of assumed. To a lot of people, myself included, he kind of felt like the hybrid of CM Punk and Jeff Hardy. And I think he really could have gotten over huge. But right now, he's doing great in the announcer role, so I really have no qualms about it. He's doing great with his own network show, and, as a commentator in NXT and the pre-show host and stuff like that, I think he's great at it. He's an awesome talker as it was. So it's great to see that he's doing well. And then we get to Ray LaPon, Adam Rose, Leo Kruger. This was the most interesting part. Because like I said, they started this documentary thing around mid-2013, long before discussions even happened of turning him into Adam Rose. And they did show the creative meeting with Triple H and all the other head honchos, like I was talking about before, all the creative administrators and stuff like that down in NXT, that he just wasn't getting over as Leo Kruger. As great of a character as it was, I was a big Leo Kruger fan. I was very disappointed to hear that he was getting rid of that gimmick in favor of something else that I thought wouldn't fit him, and I'll get to that in a minute. But they were talking about how he just wasn't really committed to the role. Like his in-ring work, he just it wasn't clicking, and it showed that, in his character, great character, but it showed that he just wasn't there yet. He wasn't dedicating himself to that character it just wasn't who he is. And Triple H is like, okay, we'll just flip him, see how it works. It could bomb, they could love him. We'll have to wait and see. And they showed some footage of his debut, which, you know, I go back and watch all the time because that was the day that I became a Rosebud. From May 2013, or 2014, excuse me, his debut was Adam Rose. A complete 180, of course, from Leo Kruger. And they talked about how no one chanted Leo Kruger. And Full Sail University is known for being a very smarky crowd. So it was kind of impressive that they didn't chant, you know, any like Leo Kruger or anything like that at him, which was great. And it got over huge on night one, and he was very emotional outside when he was talking to Triple H, and he was talking to Bill DeMott, and he almost came down crying. And, you know, they showed a real personal side of a humanitarian side, so to speak, of Adam Rose, Ray LaPon. Like I said before, he does have a child who does have a birth defect. And I think they had a second child not too long ago, which is great. And, you know, hearing him without the accent and talking about how he always aspired to be a wrestler, you know, growing up in South Africa, coming here to the United States, being picked up by WWE, a really touching story. And a lot of people are not Leo Kruger, Adam Rose fans. I'm still an Adam Rose fan. I think the guy is good. Just not a fan of the booking. I mean, the guy, when he came up, I've talked about this ad nauseum before in reviews and podcasts and stuff like that. You know, when the guy got called up to the main roster, you know, they really never handled it right from the get-go. The vignettes, I got that, but there really wasn't much more to the character than the entrance. And I thought turning him heel would be, you know, beneficial, but it really wasn't. I mean, he would beat up a bunny and that was it. They never really went full throttle with the heel turn. He's a babyface one week, he's a heel the next. People just stopped caring after a while. And, you know, after watching him on the show, I watched, I think, he wasn't on NXT this week. He was on Main Event. I watched Main Event last night, and I'm like, I can't look this guy the same way that I did before, knowing how such a good guy that he is, you know, behind this character. And I know that's like a lot of the cases with a lot of the people on the roster right now. You have a shitty character like The Big Show. And I rail on The Big Show all the time about how, like, you know, I don't like his booking, whatever. You know, obviously, behind the scenes, the guy's a sweet dude. He is Paul White, and I'm a huge fan of Paul White. Not so much a Big Show in 2015, or at least being in the main event scene. But with Adam Rose, though, I feel like, I don't know if you can just make him Ray LaPon. I doubt that. You know, even he went on his Twitter after the special and was tweeting, do you want to see back Leo Kruger or Adam Rose? And a lot of people said Leo Kruger. And maybe that time has come, because Triple H said in that creative meeting, you know, he's not really dedicating himself to that character. That's not who he is. He needs more time to develop that character, hone that persona. And I think 2 years later he has. And I think if he goes back to his heel roots, maybe he has more of a chance of success in the main roster. He's a very solid wrestler. He's a great guy. Go back and watch his special. You can really feel for the guy and his story of becoming great. And it's really depressing too. Not depressing, but it really is disheartening, showing how huge that gimmick got over, so to speak, for like a night or two in NXT as Adam Rose. And that's kind of the end of the story for him. They don't really obviously go into his time and flopping on the main roster and becoming a jobber. And why would they? But, you know, it really is disheartening to see how happy he was coming out of his first night as Adam Rose. And then a year and a half later, 2 years later, he's not doing anything. You know, he's on the main roster, wrestling on Main Event and Superstars and whatever else. And I've been an Adam Rose fan, like I said before. Leo Kruger was never one of my top favorites in NXT. Always liked the character, was not one of my top 3 favorites or anything like that. Adam Rose, same thing, is never one of my top 5, top 7 favorites. But I've always been an Adam Rose fan. Love the enthusiasm, love the gimmick. It was just never really handled properly, I think. Never going to be a world champion, obviously. Babyface, heel, whatever. And I think they can kind of find success with him if he went back to being Leo Kruger. At least, you know, it's worth a shot, because I think that character was pretty good. It was innovative, it was creative, it was original. And I think he did pretty well on it. I think 2 years later they kind of got rid of those bugs where, you know, they thought that he wasn't fully dedicating himself to that character. And like I said, it's, you know, coming out of that feud, I'm thinking of like Miz down Miz, you know, coming out of the Miz down Miz thing, you know, when Mizdow was thanking, or Sandow, excuse me, was thanking, you know, the fans, you can never really look at that guy again as a jobber or an impersonator, which he went back to being this past week on Main Event, which was fun, but that's another rant for another day. With Ray LaPon, Leo Kruger, Adam Rose, whatever you want to call him, coming out of that, you know, all the positive feedback that he got from wrestlers and fans and officials and stuff like that, they would be foolish not to capitalize off that. And I don't know who it was. I think it might have been maybe Court Bauer on the Stone Cold podcast. I think it was this past week on Thursday. He was talking about how they never really fully capitalized off the major PR that WWE got or Darren Young got after he came out as gay a couple years ago. And I mean, they kind of did. They turned him babyface, but they never won the tag team titles, and they broke up a couple months after that. The Primetime Players, and you know, they have since reunited the Primetime Players. But they're still not doing anything. So I feel like, you know, I don't think they will, like, you know, give Ray Lupon a huge push next week, and nor should they. But I feel like he could be handled better. As Adam Rose, as Leo Kruger, whoever, I think the guy has a lot to offer from an in-ring standpoint, from a character standpoint. He deserves to be here. He has earned that contract. You know, I think, like I said, I think it would be foolish if they didn't try to do something to follow up the way that people now perceive him as not only a wrestler, as a character, but as a human being. This guy is amazing. I have mad respect for the dude coming into that special. And you will too if you check it out for yourself. Like I said, you can check it out on watchwrestling.ch. I'm sure there's other websites that you can find it off of, because I don't think ESPN is replaying it on their channel until like next week. And you don't want to wait until next week to check this out. Trust me. And as I said, the bottom line of all this that I mentioned before, I've seen The Wrestler, I've seen Beyond the Mat, I've seen Wrestling in Shadows, I've seen the CNN documentary about Chris Benoit. They were all really good. They were all very fascinating in different ways, all very interesting and educational. But none of them really put the business in a good light, in a positive light, which is very rare. You know, I understand for those separate times in the Attitude Era, in the 80s, you know, 10 years ago even, the business has come so far, you know, from the PR standpoint. A lot of it, like the Make-A-Wish Foundation, they really show how great they are. But, you know, the fact they're doing it at all, I think, is awesome. And a lot of people don't recognize, you know, people look at wrestling as like, oh, the steroid business. And I don't want to go on a huge rant about that. But I feel like this was a step in the right direction, which I think is fucking awesome, because we never get stuff like this. You know, for WWE to air something like this in their network is, for one thing, and, you know, it is one thing. But then you get it airing on a huge outlet like ESPN, and all the positive feedback that it got, the way it was done, the way it was filmed, the talents they analyzed, I thought it was all great. It's not like it was on Destination. I'm not the shit on TNA. It's not like on some unknown network, or it was on WWE's network themselves, and they did it. You know, ESPN, you know, home of all the sports in the world, you know, baseball, football, soccer, everything, you know. And there's a lot of the sports fans that do perceive wrestling, that have never seen it or haven't watched it in a long time, perceive it as being stupid or the steroid business or whatever. Hopefully, in watching this documentary, that can kind of open the eyes of a lot of people and see that wrestling is not what people thought it was or isn't anymore and stuff like that. And, you know, above all else, it gives NXT more exposure, which I think is fucking amazing. Because NXT, you don't need me to tell you how awesome it is. You know, NXT has been great for countless years now. I did a video blog on this a couple months ago for the evolution of NXT right before the special, or on the 5-year anniversary of NXT, the show. But, you know, NXT is one of the best things about the network. I fucking love the WWE network, but I feel like NXT, you know, for people that don't watch the old pay-per-views or the new shows and stuff like that, NXT is worth the $9.99 alone. I mean, I know it's free for the month of May, but still, I think you need to sign up for the network, if only to watch NXT. I'm not, like, forcing it on you, because I would never want anyone to force, like, watch this, you know, like, you know, watch this, you know, Japan promotion and stuff like that, because I just don't have time. So I understand where people are coming from if they don't have time to watch NXT or anything else, Lucha Underground. But I feel like with NXT, you know, it is worth, you know, taking maybe an hour of your day, you know, an hour out of your day just to watch it. If you only watch Raw, I mean, I would skip SmackDown to watch NXT any day of the week. I think SmackDown can be good sometimes, but NXT is consistently entertaining. It gives you a glimpse of the future. And make no mistake about it, the future is now. So the release of this documentary on ESPN, the timing could not have been any better. Was hyped when I saw the promo about a month and a half ago on YouTube, and it definitely lived up to my expectations. I give it 2 thumbs up, and wow, I'm a half an hour in, just, you know, talking all about reviewing this special. But it's well worth it, though. Well worth the watch. You know, if you watch it online, it's about maybe 45 minutes, about 50 minutes. Really not that long at all if you know, have an hour to spare. It's well worth it, like I said. Definitely worth the hour, so check it out at your leisure. But that's it for today's video blog. Hope you guys enjoyed it. I want to get your thoughts on what you thought about the E60 Behind the Curtain special on ESPN. You can tweet me on Twitter at WrestleRant. You can find me on Facebook at Graham GSM Matthews at facebook.com/Graham.GSM.Matthews, or leave a comment on this very video. Would love to get your thoughts. on the special, what you thought about it, if you liked it, if you didn't like it, what you specifically liked about it, etc., etc., etc. Make sure to comment, like, share, and subscribe. All support is greatly appreciated. So until next time, folks, have a great weekend, and I'll catch you guys down the road.